Hi, welcome to Okta's online presentation for the EDUCAUSE Security Professionals Conference. Like all of you, we're very sorry that we can't be together in person, and I hope everybody is doing well during these times. But look forward to chatting with you and to share a little bit about what we're seeing within higher education as it relates to the identity and access management modernization efforts for many colleges and universities. Um, so again, my name's Kevin. I've worked in higher education for the last 26 years. I've helped serve different departments and units around the institution, including career services, cooperative education, human resources, financial aid, athletics, and also worked a bit in the development and advancement operations as well. I live in Austin, Texas, and you'll see a little bit more about my hobbies there below. So some of you probably know Okta really well, but some of you may have never heard about us. And first, there's a little bit of a trivia. Many folks may ask, is this an acronym? Is the name an acronym for something? But it's actually a meteorological term to measure the cloud coverage, which is, of course, is a play on the fact that we're a cloud-based identity as a service identity platform to help institutions connect users into the growing number of cloud applications, as well as on-prem resources. But I thought, again, the trivia there would help you show some appreciation for the clever name. But the company itself, our primary and our main mission is to help securely connect users into those resources within your institution. But we don't have an investment into what applications you're actually using. So neutrality is extremely important for us. So we don't care if you use Office 365 or G Suite. We don't care what type of messaging service that you use. Our goal is really just to help secure your institution, knowing that the security perimeter has moved well past the firewalls and VPNs now out into the personal identities. So this is our core focus, and this is our mission. And you'll also probably have seen us on a number of the different Magic Quadrants. So for the Gartner Magic Quadrant for access management, we're the leading provider in that space. But what's also most impressive is just the progress over the years to see how Okta has really moved forward and separated from the rest of the pack. We're also on a couple of the Forrester Wave reports, one of which for the identity as a service for enterprise. We're the leader in that space. And we're also the only identity and access management platform on the Forrester Wave report for Zero Trust. So our ecosystem that I'll be describing today with different partners and other solution providers is extremely strong to help those institutions build their Zero Trust framework. Within Okta, our higher education unit has really been growing over the last year or two. So we've employed a lot of new staff that focus entirely on colleges and universities, a lot of them out in different regions to visit more locally with campuses. So you'll see a number of those folks on the top. And then we also work with a great solutions team that really spends their time to focus on the nuances and the intricate details around systems that campuses are using. And we also have a great alliances partnership program, again, for those folks working with those different companies and vendors that you all are using today to help better connect Okta into those resources. So there's a number of things to consider that could open up a conversation with identity. Most people probably think of Okta as maybe just a single sign-on platform with MFA. That's a very simple viewpoint, but it certainly is part of our solution set. So single sign-on, looking at the left-hand side and moving right, is a component to, of course, easily connect those users with the different resources that you've given them access to. There's a lot of intricate details also within that around group management, different policies, et cetera. But of course, SSO is one of the core features within the platform available to campuses. But Universal Directory really takes on a whole different conversation because it's a highly configurable directory with the configurable attributes in there. And we can master IDs from different campus systems, from the student system, HR system. We can sync up directly with Active Directory, LDAP services. And we can also import in information from other resources as well. So you start to really build a full profile of identities within our Universal Directory based on these different places, and also have bidirectional sync in many of those cases too. But what's also unique about our service for higher education is we don't license on the number of accounts or users that are in the system. So for institutions that haven't been able to really expand out to other types of users because it really exceeded their capabilities within, let's say, Active Directory. This opens up a whole other set of possibilities. And then as we're talking more about cloud applications and on-prem applications, the conversation might also shift to what is your security coverage around administrative servers? And a lot of institutions have some pretty gaping holes there where if somebody is deprovisioned or leaves the institution, they may not actually be cut off from some of those administrative servers for some time. So advanced server access is a way to also extend SSO and MFA capabilities into those sensitive administrative servers to ensure that you have all of the ground cover from each of those security perspectives. And adaptive MFA, I've mentioned a little bit before, but we could certainly spend quite a bit of time talking through that. There's different types of policies and controls that you can put into place there. You can have different types of MFA solutions integrated in with Okta. Certainly we provide our own with a mobile application with Okta Verify. But what's nice is maybe you already have a MFA solution deployed out to staff or faculty, but you haven't quite decided on how to push that out to students. Well, you could offer staff and faculty one MFA solution, students a different MFA solution, or better yet, you could give them the option to choose on their own. So you could give students the ability to choose from Okta Verify or Google Authenticator or other ones that you so choose are best fit for that group. You could also set MFA factors even on a per application basis. So if some of your secure applications require a bit more security control, you could also assign MFA policies and options specific to that one application. And lifecycle management is something that we'll dig into a bit more here, but it's clearly the provisioning and deprovisioning components into different applications as users are join the organization, as they move into different roles, or as they leave and then therefore deprovisioned. An access gateway is usually a critical component as we talk to campuses that have on-prem applications and resources, such as a locally installed student information system, locally installed HR system, and the sorts. So again, incorporating this provides the users with a seamless or a single place for their SSO and MFA experience to both cloud applications and on-prem. So there's quite a bit more that we could talk through here, but depending on the institution, those are some of the common areas that we usually get into. And then the conversation also gets into different partner programs. So within our Okta integration network, first we connect very well within different solution providers, like some campuses may use Endpoint Solutions or mobile device management solutions, different types of security solutions. So we can integrate into those other ones such as Splunk or CrowdStrike or Titanium or you name it. And then to have information passed back and forth to further tighten up the perimeter using identity there. But within our Okta integration network, you can also not only connect in with lifecycle management to provision and deprovision into different systems like Office 365, but we'll talk a little bit more about workflows today, where you can then actually go in and perform functions within Office 365 as the one example, and to complete the full onboarding or offboarding experience. And overall, just generally what we're seeing in higher education, this is an excellent time to really rethink identities or rethink identity and access management now that all of these tools are available. Most institutions are still a bit confined in thinking about only students, staff, and faculty, and how to easily allow somebody to click on an application and potentially put MFA into the mix. But for a lot of institutions, they're leaving a lot of other user types way outside of that scope or within that service. For example, looking at all the different types of donors that are contributing to the institution, want to support it, but they're treated separately and really disconnected from a lot of the other applications or services that you provide. And usually this is because extending access to that group either means blowing up your license with whatever existing or older identity platform is in place, or just also opens up a lot of security holes by offering it to that many users. So those are just one example itself, but we're really asking campuses to think about all the different persons that are engaged with the institution, that are walking across the campus, that may need to access certain resources, but you're not really able to reach around that right now today. because of the existing architecture, infrastructure, and again, some of the older tech. And one of the use cases that we'll share that kind of highlights this is the University of Notre Dame, who's really a great client, a great partner of ours, and we appreciate their willingness to share information about their implementation. But and since they've consolidated about 20 years of homegrown identity infrastructure once they implemented Okta as an independent cloud-based identity platform. In the process, they consolidated 200 different servers by also going up there, and it effectively gave them a single pane of glass, so they didn't have 200 AD servers, for example, tucked away all across the institution and all across the world. But by bringing it all into one place, they could then see user traffic that they weren't really able to identify before. They can also identify app utilization a lot better, which applications are most popular, and which applications are we spending license money on that are effectively never used. And their rollout of MFA was labeled a non-event, which is what we always hope for with any implementation. So great job to them, and we really appreciate, again, the feedback that they've provided to us along the way. Another use case is actually an institution in Australia, Monash University, but they're a global institution with locations in Malaysia, Italy, India, and in China. And the numbers are really staggering. They have about 170,000 users within their identity platform in Okta. But the number that really stands out to me is they have about 60,000 groups. And considering a person can fit into multiple groups by types of personas, by location, by units or colleges. In all those different ways, they have 60,000 different variations of groups that then control policy around security, login, permissions, MFA requirements, etc. And they were also able to integrate 250 applications into Okta in less than a month. So they basically took 10 applications per day for the course of a month, went through the full integration, testing, and rollout, 10 per day over that month. And they were basically cutting it off from ADFS over into the Okta, but the users never really saw anything in that process. It was transparent to them in the way that they handled that migration. And then once those were connected in, they then moved out to MFA to over 100,000 users in 100 days. So the case about simplicity and ease of use would certainly be made there. So that's a little bit from Monash, and there's another institution actually in Australia that we like to talk a lot about because they're a classic case of someone who's really thinking differently about how they use their identity and access management systems. So again, most campuses might think of identity as systems as, well, again, single sign-on and MFA. But what they're doing is they've transformed the way that they onboard students by using the identity platform. So for example, in the old way, students would receive an email from admissions or from the student system. It would say, congratulations, you've been accepted into Flinders. Click here, and then it'll take them to a web page to read countless pages of information, follow detailed instructions to set passwords, gain access to systems. And they often joke that if you can complete your onboarding, then you're probably going to graduate from the university. So they were able to change that to now being a 45-second process that students could follow on their phone. And they accomplished that by pulling communications or sending communications, pulling detailed information from the identity platform to make the emails personalized to them, and then to also clearly direct them back into their user account from which was within Okta, so that they can then proceed to set up their password, enroll in MFA. The applications were already set to go based on the user types. So again, all of this happened over 45 seconds on their phone. So great transformation, but they really used their identity platform as the central point for that. And then there are other use cases like St. Edward's University here where I live in Austin, Texas. Great staff, but they don't have a lot of staff within IT. And certainly they still have to meet the demands of the different colleges and departments who are purchasing or licensing best-of-breed cloud solutions. So what they've really done is implemented a cloud-based Okta identity system to help free up their time to be less programmatic about setting up systems and having to work in code, and to be a lot more strategic and servicing those departments going forward. Is also helpful for them from a recruiting standpoint because as you look for competing with tech talent in Austin, Texas, or other hot spots around the country, it's difficult to find somebody that has experience working with 20 or 30-year-old legacy identity technology, but being able to onboard them quickly with this modern platform is one of the benefits that they have. So I want to speak just briefly about really a hot topic right now for us is workflows, identity-centric workflows. And I mentioned a little bit of this related to our lifecycle management. So lifecycle management, most conversations are, hey, how do you create an account when somebody joins the institution? What type of systems do you then grant to them if they become move from a student to a student worker, or when they graduate, or when they retire? How do we then deprovision them from systems? Fairly simple, if you will, but rather, of course, life is not simple, but there's a lot of details that happen within there, and it's usually wrapped up into a lot of if-then type of logic. And that if-then logic then requires institutions usually to write custom code, PowerShell, different types of scripts to accommodate these situations as they happen. So our goal at Okta is to make everybody's life simpler and to remove as much custom code as we can to make it more sustainable going forward. So workflows is within our lifecycle management, and it tackles those different types of if-then logic statements. And it also helps in other cases like resolving identity creation conflicts, something I'll talk a little bit more about later on. But whenever you have multiple source of truth coming in, or source of records, source of records coming in, how do you identify if there are multiple contacts within there, and what do you do about that? Or how do you take information out of the identity platform in terms of system logs or other activity, and then create reports and disseminate that out to administrators? Again, custom code is usually the response for most universities. So just a few examples to share what the platform now allows you to do. Previously, it was really constrained to, for example, Salesforce. Hey, you've been added. We're going to add you into Salesforce. Congratulations. But now what the platform can do is to go in and say, okay, well, we've identified certain user attributes. We've gone into Salesforce not only to create your account, but to look up your information from the identity source to then determine which teams that you'll be assigned to within Salesforce. And then from there, we can also assign you out to different resources within that application. So again, it's taking it further into the system as opposed to just granting you access to it. Same for deprovisioning as well. So non-destructively deprovisioning, what does that mean? So not just cutting you off from example box if you were to leave the university, but you've probably worked on a lot of documents and information, and you have a lot of really some records that shouldn't just be destroyed. So with that, using Okta workflows, you can perform additional functions such as when you deprovision this user, also look in to see who their manager is. And then from there, copy all of the person's content in box into a subfolder for their manager. So we can do that as part of the deprovisioning process to eliminate a lot of staff or loss. And then that can also get into different ticketing systems. So not just giving access to it, but going into ticketing systems to then kick off different other types of workflows or other approval processes, and notifying users and admins of certain things. So Office 365, for example, again, not just giving you access to it, but going in and drafting or sending out emails to notify certain persons of certain events. Or if you use communication channels like Slack, taking that new person that just joined the university and just automatically subscribe them to certain Slack channels, and also send out a Slack message to all of the staff welcoming this new person to the team. So it can be a very personalized and experience for a person coming on board when you've gone in and had all of those automated processes kick off. And then within Office 365, we could even go even further and talk about other use cases for creating groups or adding folks to groups, guest user account type of provisioning and deprovisioning. A number of things could be discussed on that front. And there's also time and context. So not just terminating access, but potentially having the identity platform be the one to say, okay, we're going to remove access, but we're going to time this out. So it'll automatically wake up in 6 months and then start to deprovision them from other systems, for example, or provide more restrictions around that. And then there's also other situations such as staging. So again, when you are mastered from the HR system or the student system, maybe you don't want to give them access to all of their applications all in one shot at that one time, but you want to stage things out. So first and foremost, maybe ensuring that they've been set up in Office 365 or G Suite properly. Maybe go ahead and set up those accounts before then the next stage of adding them certain applications that are effectively going to kick off other communications back to their O365 box. Simple example, but again, you may want to have things staged in that way, or you may want to kind of hold back and say, you've been hired today, but we really don't want all of these started until your start date or even the start of the semester. So different ideas, but Identity Engine can be driving a lot of those if-then situations. Postponing account creations, disseminating initial passwords, updating attributes without overwriting, some of the details within workflows that can be discussed. And again, removing identity, resolving identity conflict, creation conflicts, but not by having to create custom code and having that call data out of the identity system and then put it back into it, but rather go ahead and having that all happen inherently within the platform and the identity platform. Pulling reports used to be a manual process, creating a custom report, a custom script. That can also be handled directly within the platform. And remember, with the deeper provisioning into Office 365, we can automatically create spreadsheets, have those spreadsheets emailed around, just a kind of a world of opportunities start to open up. And it's really simple. So we want to have this really easy to find the different applications that have those deeper embedded workflow components to it. So you can just search within there. If it's Gmail, if it's Office 365, you can start a flow with drag and drop logic. And again, embedding that if-then logic along the way too. So that's one of the cool conversations that we're having that is way just beyond how do you have somebody log in, have MFA, and get access to a system. Passwordless authentication is also a continued conversation. It's something that Okta has been pushing towards for the last few years. And as such, we're really a lot closer to a full passwordless experience with device trust. So with this, we know the complications exist with different users that are accessing different systems, both on-prem and cloud-based, using different devices, running on different operating systems. And effectively, campuses have solved this either by building more infrastructure on campus with different WAM servers, different radius servers, and just building more that they have to maintain and support. And they're also using open source tools to go through and build a lot of this out, which again has a lot of staff requirements to continue to build, support, and maintain and upgrade as you go along. So again, our job is to help clean out a lot of the clutter. In the older world, you again probably have all these different components in the lower right-hand corner with your WAM servers, your SSO servers, your password reset servers, your radius servers. But moving forward, we can help clean and modernize that by having Okta being able to connect in to those different resources, and then both on-prem and cloud, as well as having users who start to use any devices, but having those devices registered within the identity platform. We also connect very well with different endpoint solutions, as I mentioned. So if it's a CrowdStrike, Tanium, or any of the others, many of the others, we'll have those partners to where we can perform integrations with them, so they can also provide additional signals provided from those endpoint solutions that could be fed into the policies of then how are they logging in, or how are they capable to log in to access secure resources on this side. So there's quite a bit too that can be discussed about our push into device trust, device registration, and password authentication, passwordless authentication, and that could also come in the form of factor sequencing. So being able to have users not follow the traditional enter your ID, enter your password, and then go to an MFA, but you can actually use passwordless authentication for some users in some cases by reversing or changing the factor sequencing on that. So because you are a trusted staff person, because you're logging in from this IP on this device, really just have to follow this one MFA step and you're in. at best. So a lot of cool ideas that could also be introduced there. And then just overall, I think I mentioned, or at least worth mentioning, cloud versus on-prem. So this isn't new as well, in the sense that a lot of campuses have Radius servers, and they have different ways of accomplishing some type of SSO into an on-prem application. But for us, it's about the simplification, and it's also improving the user experience. So you don't have to go through 3 different doors with 2 different logins to get to those resources, but bringing all of that into one single sign-on, one dashboard type of experience, to be able to introduce MFA and have control and have policy set around all of those resources in one place, whether it's from signals coming in from Okta, for example, saying, hey, here's a threat that we're seeing related to this situation, you should impose MFA, or if it's with partners such as Proofpoint. So because this staff person is a little click happy and they click on everything that's emailed to them, we're going to put them into a very attacked person type of group. And then for the on-prem as well as cloud applications, they're required to go through additional security controls. So it is about the simplification from both the user's perspective as well as it is from the architectural perspective, by, again, cleaning up a lot of the clutter, modernizing and lifting identity up out of that infrastructure. So those are a few conversational points we do have quite often with universities. There's some great case studies or anecdotes that we can also share with institutions about how they're starting to move forward and do more creative things. My email address is on the screen, so if you have interest in talking more about either your institution or just generally what we're doing in higher education, we'd love to hear from you. So feel free to send us a quick email, and we appreciate your time and enjoy the rest of the conference.